And good morning to you, St. Lucia. Thank you so much for tuning in for your regular morning update. I am Lucia Joseph, coming to you live as always from the studios of the National Television Network, the Government Information Service. And as promised, if you watched our program on Thursday, that's yesterday, the 17th of March, you would have seen my sit down with Dr. Jenny Isaac, and we were discussing salt, because it is Salt Awareness Week. At the end of that program, I did tell you that we'll be speaking with the Chief Nutritionist in the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and Elderly Affairs, Ms. Lisa Hunt. I'm so happy to have my kin sister with me this morning, sharing that name. Yesterday, on Thursday, we had that mini med class going through salt, sodiums, the difference, and so forth. And we're going to focus really where we left off with Dr. Isaac, looking at the nutritional aspect and how we can balance our intake of salt, and so because it is important to the body, and we'll talk more about that with Ms. Hunt. Thank you so much for being able to be with us. Now, both Dr. Isaac and myself were surprised that there is such an observance as Salt Awareness Week, and that is the 14th to the 20th of March.
Yes.
Can you explain to us how we came to have this observance, this global observance?
Yes, so Salt Awareness Week is held every year. It's actually put on by World Action, where the strategy is really to reduce salt intake. It's a global initiative. So every year in March, there is a week that is observed. So this year it is from 14th to the 20th of March. So every nation is, hopping on board, because we know the detrimental effects of consuming too much salt on the body. So this is really the aim, to get persons to consume less salt, to raise awareness within communities, nations, individuals, and this year they are focusing on the industries, because what they have recognized is that 70% of the salt, or should I say sodium, that we consume is not from our cooking. It's actually from processed foods, from that industries put. And now that processed foods are being consumed a lot, whether it's they use the salt to preserve, sometimes it's for taste, for whatever reason that salt is used, they are using way too much. So this year the theme is to shake the salt habit. So they are appealing to the industries, the bakeries, all those companies that are producing foods for people to consume, to cut back on the sodium and the salt that is being added to food, because most of the salt that we take in is from the processed, or should I say pre-packaged foods, dinners, like canned foods, not frozen, canned, packaged, processed foods. This is where most of the sodium that we consume is coming from. So we know we are not a country that produces a lot, but we make bread, and bread can be extremely high in sodium. Number one, not only by the salt that is added, but the baking soda is a salt as well. Bicarbonate of soda is a salt as well. So all this is increasing the sodium in the bread. So bread is like a food that has, a product that has what you call hidden salt. When you taste it, it might not taste salty, but the sodium is there. And this is where we get food, because we may say, okay, this food is not salty, so it shouldn't have much salt. But sodium by itself does not have taste. It's when it comes with the chloride, it has flavor.
And so that's why you get that sort of addictive feeling. So because there are certain foods that you will taste, and while you may, as you say, you may not be having that saltiness to it, but you just have to have more and more and more of it, stimulating those taste buds.
Yes, and if you start to like the salt from a very young child, we need to start with the young children. And I'm very concerned about what we are feeding our children. When you look at the things that they have in the lunch kits, the packaged products, they are extremely high in salt. The snacks, If you look at the labels, you know, I wish I had a label to discuss some, because it's something that parents need to be aware of. They are consuming way too much sodium or salt than is necessary. So people need to be educated, know how to read labels, because at the end of the day, we cannot produce everything. We have certain things we have to buy, like crackers, bread, but we must come together and see how we can reduce salt intake, because I'm sure Dr. Isaac elaborated on the health conditions that we get in St. Lucia, and hypertension or high blood pressure is one of them. And you know, there are no symptoms, and there are many people who have high blood pressure walking around and don't know that they have it, and that's why they call it a silent killer. And having high salt intake in the diet can contribute to that.
Now, you mentioned the crackers, and certainly a lot of people may say, well, okay, I'm not eating bread, and so a lot of people go towards crackers as the substitute for the bread. But you mentioned the sodium in there, and that is something a lot of people don't give thought to, because they believe the cracker looks lean and it's you know, all flaky, and so because they don't see any dough in there, that flour dough, that excess flour, you know, that when you open the bread and you see that. So in the minds of individuals, the cracker is the healthier option to go for.
It can be, depends on the type of cracker. It can be, you look at the label, you look at the sodium content, and per serving, you need to know what amount of sodium you are taking. So let's just say a serving of whole wheat crackers is, just give you an example, I'm not sure how much it is. Let's say it's about 140 milligrams of sodium, which is actually low, which is a good figure. So you say, okay, if I have 6 crackers, I have 140 milligrams of sodium, this is good. If you have 12 crackers, you have to multiply the 140 by 2, which is 280. You have, you know, 3 servings, so you have to keep on multiplying. So that same product that was okay, or should I say good, normal, or low sodium, when you have more of that food, you have to keep multiplying, because the serving size is increasing, and so the sodium content is increasing. Now it depends on the crackers. You have some crackers that has very little sodium, but you have crackers that even when you taste, you'll see the salt crystals on the top of the crackers. So again, this is why it's important to know how to read your labels and what to look for on the nutrition labels.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes when in reading the label, we don't go to see how many servings, but that's always to the top. Yes. People believe, well, I only had 6 crackers, and perhaps the label would tell you that it's 3 per serving.
So you have to do the multiplication. And so, you know, reading label is not something that is taught at school. And you know, I know it because of my profession, but many people don't know how to read labels, and we understand that. So we are out there teaching people, especially at the health centers, how to read labels. And I think at schools we need to teach the children as well, so they are informed, because you're looking at the product and you think, okay, it says X amount of calories or X amount of sodium, and you think that you have the entire product and you think that's what you're having. But no, it's per serving, and this bottle might be 2 servings. So it's important to know how many servings before you know how much you are having, so you can calculate it.
Right. Now, you mentioned about the children, and yesterday I posed that very question to Dr. Isaac, and because I was telling her that we grew up in a culture where, as a child, you will be fed just anything that you want, they'll give it to you, and then they will say it's okay because you're a child, you go run in the yard and you'll burn it off. And she did acknowledge that children would burn that off, because the sodium passes out through sweat, but on the nutritional aspect of things, you're more concerned about what we would more latch onto as being our preferred taste, if you will.
Changing of the taste buds. Because if you start giving a child, I have seen people give a child that cannot walk something like corn curls, those corn snacks. What's going to happen? The child is going to have this likeness to salty food. So when that child gets older, or even, from a year to 2 years, you now give that child a low salt food, which might be considered normal for somebody else. They may not want it because they're used to getting these high salties. And salt gives food flavor. I mean, let's be realistic. It does give food flavor. But if you start giving it to the children from a very young age, then it will only get worse from there, because they will be used to that. I remember I cooked for some people sometime, and they had to add salt to the food because they just said it didn't have salt. But you know, it's a habit. If you're somebody who has trained yourself not to consume too much salt, when you actually go to a restaurant,
it becomes a problem.
Yes, it's like everything is salty, and sometimes people will tell you, but the salt is good. But you used to a lower salt in your food, you will find it. So it's like
Dr. Isaac explained, you know, that 1 teaspoon, put water in there, stir that, and just use that one, and just divide it for your cooking. Yeah, so
that should be the maximum that you should have for the day.
For the day.
Now, we are black people, we should actually have less, because we say we are salt sensitive people. And even you get sodium that is naturally in foods as well. So all this has to be taken into consideration. But there are lots of, you know, what you call hidden salt. Like even sweet foods that you would not expect to have sodium has it.
Has sodium in there.
Because they, you know, the sweet and the sugar, sweet and savory, kind of gives it a nice kick. So even sweet foods,
that's why desserts are a hit. That savory dessert is always a hit.
There, yeah. So we have to be aware of that, because we are consuming way more than we need.
I just want to go back to before we move on to the children, because the conkers is a very popular snack for our children, and you see that in lunch kits across the island.
Yes.
Now what we've seen with the food industry is that they tell you it is baked. And they put it big and bold to the front.
Marketing strategy.
So it is baked. And now, and there was, you know, there's all the rave that baked goods are far better than if it is deep fried and so forth. So does it being baked, is that any comfort for a parent to say, well, let's choose this one instead?
They would use that as a marketing strategy. So one thing, the bake should have less fat, but I can't say that right now. It should have less fat because it's not fried. However, look at the sodium. Is it changed? It might be the same amount of sodium. So when we are looking at packaging of things, we are talking about salt here, so I'm focusing on sodium. But we could compare baked and fried. It's supposed to have less fat, but the salt, I can almost guarantee you might be the same, because they are not focusing on the salt. A lot of those products, let me tell you, are extremely salty. And like I said before, sodium is not even salty, because sodium and chloride makes the salt, so you take the flavor. And that's one product. And if you look at the label, if you look at the amount of sodium, some of those products can have up to 400 milligrams of sodium, or 300, which is high. That's one product. Then they have nuggets. About 3 ounces of nuggets, and a lot of parents buy this because they say, you know, it's cute, you know, there's crap in there, just
bits of
pieces of things that
and
you don't want to throw away.
Chicken nuggets.
If you eat chicken nuggets, if you cut it, you're not gonna see it's just a little bit of chicken in there with the skin and all kinds of stuff that we should not be eating.
Yeah.
Same with the hot dogs. Oh, another one again, the hot dogs. Extremely high in salt, and some children are having this almost every day. So when they have the crackers, most of them are high in salt. You have the cornkers, the pretzels, or whatever that they have in their bag. They have the sweet biscuits are high in sodium as well. Then you have the nuggets. You know, I'm not getting an idea right now. It's just to do a check of a child's food item in the lunch kit, and you'll see how much sodium that child is having. So that child would actually now, that's why a lot of the health conditions start from childhood, because when these children are having so much sodium from such a young age, then by the time they reach a teenager, they're already hypertension, sometimes even before that, because they're consistently having so much of salt. And like I said before, you know, years before we would focus more on telling people to cut back on the salt that they are cooking. I know some people do cook with a lot of salt, but the focus now we need to think about is how much of the processed foods that they are having, because like I said, 70% of what we are consuming is processed food. So if we cut back on that and have more of our home cooked meals that we prepare for our children, well, I wouldn't say bread. I make bread, but your own bread that you make for your children. I know that is stretching it.
Yeah.
But make your own little pancakes, your own things for your children. You know what you have in that product. I know people are working mothers, but our health is important. And yes, we may say we don't have time. I mean, time is precious and most of us don't have it, but we have to prioritize our health, because for me, if you don't have health, you have nothing.
You have nothing.
You will have all the money in the world. If you don't have health, you have nothing. So, and change takes time. So, you can make little changes at a time, cut back on some of the things that the children are having. That is not healthy for them, because not only is it contributing to, high blood pressure, kidney disease, and all the others, which I'm sure Dr. Isaac spoke about, but we have on the other spectrum, when you have that children are overweight. You understand? So we really need to make a change.
Now, we're going to go down the line. We know that, yes, too much salt intake is not good, but sodium on the whole is not a devil.
No, you need some. Yes.
You do need that.
You need some.
So the push is not to eliminate it completely from your diet.
No.
So tell us about what are the good points of sodium.
Okay, so sodium helps to control your fluid balance in your body. So if you don't have, like for example, sodium and potassium, they're supposed to have a balance where I think the ratio is 3 to 1. So 3 potassium to 1 sodium. But what happens is that it's the opposite, where people will have more of the sodium and less of potassium. Now, a way that we can get sodium, like we could reduce our sodium content, is by increasing our potassium foods. And again, these are from our fruits and our vegetables. So if we are consuming more of those foods, of course they are natural, then it helps to balance that fluid in our body. When you consume too much of the sodium, you would find that our body actually holds on to water, and then that could actually cause weight gain. It can cause bloatedness, puffiness. Sometimes you feel like you bloated, and it's because you have too much water retention, and so sodium can actually cause that. We need sodium about 500 milligrams thereabouts for our bodies to function properly, for our nerve impulses, so they do have the benefits, but what happens is that we are consuming way too much of it, and some of it is not because we add to the food, but because of the choices of the foods that we make, which are the processed foods. And so we cannot remove it from the processed foods, but we can cut back the processed foods that we have, that we consume.
So the effects of salt on the body now, and in terms of helping with normal cell function and so forth, but it can also perhaps how does it affect the body's relationship with water?
It holds onto the water. It holds onto the water, and that's why sometimes it could actually have people, you go on the scale, you're like, okay, yesterday I was that weight, why am I so much weight today? You may have a high salt diet. So it holds onto that water, and what it does, it can increase your blood pressure. That's why the heart now has to pump the blood harder, because you have more fluid, more blood, and the heart has to work extra, and that's why it can affect your heart if this is being done consistently.
And so in terms, and you said we're balancing, we're making sure that if you have a good balance and more intake of your potassium. So the salt within itself, does it have any sort of nutrients?
The salt, this is a good, the salt itself has a few minerals, and I know people will ask about whether sea salt is better, Himalayan, whatever the name is, different types of salts. Yes, they do have some minerals, but it is not so much where you would need to be taking in more salt to get those minerals, because you can get them from food. And whether the salt is sea salt or other salt, it will still have the same effect on your health. And the thing about when people take some, although they have a bit more minerals, like the sea salt, when people hear that something is a bit healthier, they actually take more. So in that way, it's actually not a good thing. So think of all salt almost equal, because the little trace minerals that you may get from those, you can get it from other foods. You can get it from your seafood, you can get it from other foods. So it's not something that, I need to go and get some sea salt because it has more minerals. It's just trace minerals.
So explain to us the importance of minerals now, because if that's what we're looking for, so explain to us what are those minerals, what they do, why are they important in our diet?
Well, there are many minerals. I mean, there are quite a bit of minerals. There are those you call micro, and those we call trace elements. Like, for example, like iron. Iron is a very important mineral. We don't need much of it, but we need for our blood, for our to make our DNA. So you have different minerals that have different functions in the body, and that's why we always ask persons to consume more of fruits and vegetables, because they are so important. They are needed in very small amounts, but yet they play a very important role in our bodies. You have iron, you have iodine. I don't know, iodine, you can get it from even the salt, the salt that we take in. Now, sea salt does not have iodine. Iodine is actually fortified in salt. Now, you remember maybe, right now you might not see people with goiter, but goiter was a condition where persons have some big
sort of lumpy throat.
Yes, and that's because they have added iodine to salt. Not the sea salt, the regular salt, what you call iodized salt. So that's another mineral that is needed in trace elements, and that helps to prevent that. So there are many minerals, I mean, I can't think of all of them right now, that they have really key roles in our body, whether they help with our nerves, but they all have their specific roles in our bodies, especially, like I said, iron. You know, we have an issue in, I would say, the Caribbean, where there is a lot of anemia, because we are not taking in adequate iron. And even if we take in adequate iron, there's something you call bioavailability. So you may take in all your iron foods or sometimes iron supplements, but it is not being absorbed in the body. And I think that's a bigger issue than not taking adequate iron. But we have a lot of iron, even in children as well. So that's another mineral that is key that we should really pay attention to. Actually, I was talking about that with our professor yesterday, that that's an issue where we have iron deficiency anemia. And, you know, you can get your iron from some meats. No, liver is very high in iron. You can also get it some in peas and beans. But yet still, although we need it in very small amounts, you still find that we have anemia. So that there might be another issue, whether it's, like I said, it's not bioavailable. And also you have certain foods that you take it with, like if you take iron with vitamin C, it helps to enhance it where the body is able to use it better. But if you take it with certain foods like some vegetables have what you call phytates, and it inhibits it. So when you're taking something with like vitamin C, is good to take with iron, so it can. So there's so much when it comes to nutrients and making sure that you have the right balance, how you take it, etc. Plays a role in how we use it in the body.
Now, does salt destroy nutrients in food?
Yes, it can. We take it in, and we're talking about when we take it in excess. One of those minerals, another mineral is calcium. We need calcium for our bones. We need calcium for our teeth. And so if we take too much salt, you find we can have calcium loss, where you can result in, a condition called weaker bones, where it's osteoporosis, when you take excess of salt in the diet.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of whether salting the food, keeping it, maybe you salt the meats, you keep it overnight and that sort of thing. How does that change the whole nutrient value of your meats or the foods when you sort of cure it? I believe that's the term of it.
To be honest with you, you might have some loss of vitamins, but I'm not sure if it would change, how much it would change in terms of salting your own meat. But apart from the calcium losses, I could not tell you which nutrient that would be lost just by salting the food. Now that you mentioned that salt in the food, this is one of the ways is that we consume way too much salt, is by the salt is used as a method of preservation. So in order to cut back on our salt, one of the things that we should do is to avoid. I need to mention some of those foods that are very high in salt and hidden salt, so that people are aware of some of those foods that they should cut back on.
Sure.
Because salt is used as a method of preservation, like in brine for hams and stuff like that. And these foods are extremely high in salt. Delis, you know, you go to the deli and you get your, whether it's pork, sliced pork, what else? Ham.
Well, there's the turkey ham.
Turkey.
It's quite popular because everybody believes it's not pork.
Yeah.
So it's healthier.
Again, I don't know how much salt is in there, but maybe what we can do when you buy these things is to see if we have the lower salt options. I don't know if we have that here. You know, we are not so developed.
Well, you go over, you know, the counters at the deli and you just say, just give me $5 turkey ham.
Yes, and this is what we need to move away from. Having lower salt options for persons who, you know, who already have health conditions that we do not want to exacerbate. You don't want it to get worse. You want it to improve. And we know that we have an issue with kidney disease. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have high blood pressure or you have diabetes, you consume a lot of salt in your diet, you know, one of the complications is kidney problems, and we know that kidney problems is very difficult to treat even with diets. I know, working as a dietitian, it was one of the conditions I just didn't like to treat, because it's like so many things you have to tell a person to cut back on, even things that you know that are healthy for them, because you're trying to maintain, you know, a healthy state, you know. So you don't want persons to get to that stage when they have, you know, kidney disease. You don't want to get to that stage because it's just so difficult. And, you know, even going to do dialysis, and, you know, there's a waiting list, I think, and yeah. So, you know, our whole role is to get persons to, even if you have health conditions, you can still live a healthy life by making healthier choices. So we want to educate persons as to some of the foods that they should, you know, have occasionally. We are not saying you could cut it out completely, because at the end of the day, you are human. We are human. So cut back on, you know, the delis, the hot dog, corned beef. Oh, I don't even know why people eat corned beef.
Yeah, Dr. Isaac gave us the label example of a corned beef, and yes, it was indeed staggering.
It is so salty. It is, I mean, it's been a while I've had it, but when I was younger, it is so salty. I don't know. And again, this is a way that they preserve the canned foods. Now, it's not just corned beef, canned soups.
But I was about to tell you about the soup, and this is how I really got into now checking every single label.
It is ridiculous.
I had gone into to get soup for a brother who was sick, and I just, you know, perchance I just decided to flip that around, because I'd never bought canned soup before. What is it talking about? You just make that, right?
Yes.
But so I picked it up and I just turned it around. And then I looked down, I saw 350 milligrams. And I checked, I said,
and that might be for half of it? Is it for the whole or half of it?
I didn't even check.
Maybe for half of it.
I just said, what?
It's a lot. It
was a lot. And so that really got me now into just absolutely going through the labels, making sure. And even though I don't understand, I have the phone next to me, and I am checking to see what it is that I am, you know, now purchasing to have in the body.
Yes.
So the soups are...
I think I bought, you know, during the hurricane season, you usually have to stock up. And I think one day I bought the packaged one, but it wasn't the liquid, because you have it dry and you could just add some water to it. It expired. I never used it. It was like, I think I saw 900 or 700. I was like, what? I said, no. So when we are, you know, encouraging persons to stock up on things for hurricane season, they have to watch the labels, because some of those things will be more detrimental than good for health. And you know, you cannot go wrong by cooking your own food, you know. So canned foods on the whole, you know, they put them in a brine, a way of preserving, and it's very bad for health.
Now, with our you have the natural foods, but they do have sodium in them.
Yes, you have the natural foods that have sodium.
So talk to us about that, and how much of a threat does it pose, or is it okay because it's all natural?
Yeah, it's okay. You know, you have meats, you have some in some vegetables, poultry, fish. So this is natural sodium. So I would not make an issue of that. The issue is what the other Because if you have in your food that you cook and you are not having so much of processed foods, it's not going to be an issue. It's when you having the processed food is where this is driving so much of our sodium mistake. Is the processed foods. They're bad in everything. Fat, salt, sugar, they're just bad for us, plain bad. It's just we need to have our own, cooking our own food. I mean, occasionally, yes, you can buy things, but as much as possible, we need to cut back on them. Now, there's another one, cubes. I forget to mention cubes. That's another one, soy sauce. Soy sauce gives the food nice flavor, but it is laden with sodium and salt. And so these ones you need to, maybe on an occasion, maybe Christmas, you want to have a nice fried rice, fine, but it should not be something that
on a regular basis.
It's extremely high in sodium.
Now you mentioned the cubes, and I remember that there was such enough on the cubes. There was a movement against cubes on the MSG level one, right?
Yes.
Is it okay to use cubes occasionally, or you just eliminate this completely?
I would say eliminate it, because there are some research that shows that it can cause cancer, and there's science coming out, things are changing, so it can be cancerous, and so salt in itself is cancerous when you take too much of it. So I would say eliminate it. I remember, I will talk about my own personal experience. Growing up, I didn't know much about this before I had my, studied on nutrition and stuff. And it's like, you had to put your cubes in your food to taste good.
Absolutely, and that's like soup. You needed to have that in that soup.
So
you put the Maggi cube in there, then you go and you put in the soup pack with all of that.
All this is extremely high in salt. And when I got to know more about it, I removed it from completely stop using it. And it's for a little while, you think that the food is not the same. But it's been years, and after a while, you don't miss it. You don't miss it. It's like, because, a habit takes a while, maybe 5 weeks, and after a while, you can change. So I would urge persons who are using it, start cutting back on eventually.
Because Dr. Isaac was talking about the alternative now to that would simply be using our fresh herbs. Our fresh herbs.
Yes.
And even those are perhaps that are dried out. So talk to us about that.
Yes, good point. A lot of the seasoning, when you're buying seasoning, look at the ingredients. The seasoning may not have sodium content, but it will list the ingredients, and you will know whether it has salt in it. Buy the dried ones, because a lot of the seasonings that we buy, you can get the ones that has salt and the one without salt. And if you're buying the ones with salt, by the time you shake your legal seasoning and everything, you get salt in all of them, and then it'll be too much. So if you're going to buy your rosemary, your thyme, your chives, you can have fresh ones, but it's not always available. You can also buy the dry ones. They are good, but not laden with salt. So you buy the dry ones minus the salt, because you can get them together as well.
Right, and that will do the trick. So, garlic, I find that garlic gives very good flavor to
very
the point that for me, that when I use it, it would taste like salt and even like pepper.
So you don't have to take the flavor out of your food. You just have to add some more of those nice fresh herbs that has nutritional benefits. Like ginger, turmeric, very good for the heart health. Pardon?
You have the turmeric.
Turmeric,
you have the cumin as well.
Cumin. You have I think they call it jeera in other countries. There are so many of them. Rosemary, sage, thyme, curry.
Curry is good.
Curry is okay. Yes, curry. Okay. I don't think curry has salt. I don't know. Again, it depends on how the people make it, but I don't think it has salt in there. But again, it's good to look at the labels. That's why you're going to know if it has. And when you're looking at labels of something, always see which is the first ingredient. The first ingredient will have the most, and the last will be. So if your ingredient list salt is last, then it has less salt than something that has salt in the center or at the beginning. Yeah, but it's a good point. Like, use your fresh herbs, and you could use a little lime, a little lemon, to make your meat taste good. But you don't have to be, laden it with salt. And again, it comes with the taste buds that has been changed over the years. So you may have to change those taste buds. It might take about 6 weeks to change a habit. But
that little time.
Yes. So I guess for some people it might take longer.
That little time.
But that's what research says, that it takes about 5 to 6 weeks to change a habit.
For the body to be able to adjust to its new normal.
Yes. So I wouldn't say just stop using salt. It might be too drastic, and like, what, I'm not gonna do this. But cut back a little at a time. Cut back.
What about ketchup? Because that's something else that I know that there are people who cook their meats, they will do that stew and put ketchup in there, so it gives it a bit of a thickening.
Yeah.
So what are the hidden problems with ketchup?
Yes, ketchup has hidden sugar and hidden salt. It has quite a bit of salt in there. So again, I'm not sure. I think there are low sodium options now, I think.
Oh, there are.
Yeah, I think there are. Even low sugar options. I don't want to talk about sugar, but there are low sugar options. There are those that will tell you no high fructose corn syrup as well. But ketchup is one of them that has the hidden sodium. I looked at the ketchup this morning in the label. I forgot how much is it. It's 100 milligrams. Had quite a bit. So what is 900? 100 milliliters. Sorry, 100 milliliters. That's in the quantity. I think at about 900. I don't want to say something that is incorrect, but it was quite a bit that I opened my eyes. I know, sometimes we don't use much, but the children love ketchup.
The children love it when they have the fries.
They love
and
it.
You can't have fries with. So you put salt in there.
Yes, and then you put ketchup.
And then you put your ketchup on there as well because you need it.
And sometimes some of those fries, if it was processed, will already have some salt in there.
And so now you're adding
triple salt.
So triple salt.
And you can see how the process will just add up. It just adds up. So when you now can add up all those things that you've had in a day, you're not going to be having 2,300 milligrams of what is a teaspoon of what we require. You'll be having a lot more than that, a lot more, which is causing damage to our arteries, to our organs, our kidneys, and our overall health. So the whole aim of this, to reduce that salt, is to improve our health condition. For those who already have health conditions, and for those who don't have it, is to reduce their risk or chances of developing those health conditions. And don't think that the children are immune. They are not immune. When they are consuming all those processed, highly processed or ultra-processed foods that are extremely high in salt, especially the snacks. The snacks are concerning because it's like, they'll seem higher than the other foods that you have as a meal, and sometimes these children are consuming these things on a daily basis. Hot dogs, cheese is also high in sodium, but you have the low salt or low sodium cheese options. Yeah.
So for us, we love to rationalize that if we take in the bad, we can balance it out with taking in some good. So with the children, for example, it was so popular at my time at school, the golden apple in sauce, the mango in sauce. But as you get older, you do away with the whole sauce aspect, and you just get salt on there. So you get a green mango, you put on some salt there, half-ripe mango.
That is good,
you put some salt on there. I have a coworker here, so I hope she's hearing. She can't do without her mango and salt. And in a sitting, she could probably consume 3-4 mangoes.
Oh, wow.
And you need to have salt on that.
Wow.
So how does that work? Because mangoes are great, they're good for you.
Yeah.
And now, so that's the good, and you packing on the salt on that.
So to me, it's like you're erasing that good, because taking in all that salt has adverse effects on health. So again, it's trying to change your mindset and cut back. Mangoes are fine as they are, especially if they're half ripe with that little sweetness that they have. I don't think they need any salt. But I do see the salt in sauce, and again, it comes down to the quantity that they're adding. You know, I remember tasting in Trinidad, I had, it wasn't mango, it was pineapple. It was bursting with flavor because I'd never had pineapple that was seasoned, but the salt wasn't that bad. It had like what you call shadow de beni. I know some Lucians know what shadow beni is. You know what it is?
Yes.
It has this unique...
It's one of my mother's favorite things to cook.
I love it. It has this unique flavor, so they would add this to it. It would have salt, but I don't remember the salt being so high. So maybe our mango in sauce might need a little more pep with other things. Maybe they can try a little vinegar. I don't know. It might help to kind of balance out the sweetness, but cut back on the salt, because especially if you're having quite a bit and then you are taking in more salt, and it's, you know, can be causing damage in the body.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for our vegetables, because, you know, vegetables are great, but let's face it, they could be so bland.
Yeah, again, that's why we have the different herbs and spices to spice up our food. I didn't mention cinnamon. I find cinnamon in when you're cooking chicken, and you have those different... I got some Chinese seasoning that had, well, it had cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, all mixed together, but it had no salt. You know, you put this in your chicken and it's like, the aroma is so nice. So we need to do things that can, you know, help us cut back on the salt. It can be done. It might take a little while, but it can be done. But we need to flavor our, you know, in the vegetable. It can be bland. You add your ginger. Ginger can give very nice flavor, a little vinegar, a little garlic. You can add a little salt. We're not saying it doesn't have to be, you know, completely without salt. The issue is with the processed food. So if you're not having processed food and you add your little salt to your food, you're good to go. But if you're having, you know, high diet that is high in processed foods and you didn't add in whatever copious amount of salt that you need in your food, then that can be a problem. Yeah.
But how does the salt affect the protein?
The protein I don't think salt affects protein. Not that I'm aware of. It might, but not that I'm aware of.
So that's not a whole long problem.
I don't know if it denatures the protein. I cannot say that
conclusively.
Salt, yes, that salt
that there
affects the protein. But I can research on it.
Correlation. But so, you know, people will have their salty meals and believe by tomorrow I'll be fine. It's like, you know, today let me just go all out, and by the time I will pee a lot, so I'll drink a lot of water, then I will pee it out, and tomorrow I'll be fine. But how long is that really the case, and how long does excessive salt intake, how long does that last in your body?
I think that's probably a medical question. I don't know. But this thing about, it's the same thing with sugar. People think that they could just take it and then just... Yes, people who exercise, you sweat a lot, like Dr. Isaac said. You sweat a lot, yes, you would lose salt in your body. Like athletes. Athletes can take in more than the normal person because they tend to work out a lot, and so they sweat. And in your sweat, you release some of that salt. But saying that you're okay, today I'm going to eat as much salt as I want, and tomorrow I'm going to pee it out, it's not that easy. It's not that simple where... If it could have been done that way, then, you know, we would have been fine. It's just, okay, you take your salt today, just drink lots of water and just spit out next day. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. And there's the same thing for the sugar. I know we're not talking about salt, but the same thing with the sugar. People feel that, you know, I'm working out. I'm going to burn that sugar. I can eat whatever sugar I want, and it's okay. But no, research says you could be a very fit person in the gym, but the intake of excess sugar will increase the chances of heart disease. So I assume the same thing is salt. It just cannot be just, okay, I can do whatever I want and next day I'll just fix it. We wish we could have done that.
Yeah, we'd all just be totally happy.
And the next day, yes, but it's not that simple. It has its adverse effects on the health, and, you know, the body can hold on to it, and of course it has an effect on the potassium. Your potassium level will be low, and we need our potassium level for our heart to be beating regular. And so if you take too much of salt, then it can have irregular heartbeat because the ratio is not where it should be. Yeah.
So I know over the years you've been such a strong proponent for our local foods in terms of our ground provisions.
Yes.
Dasheen,
all of them.
yes,
Yes.
sodium, it has the natural sodium.
Yeah,
so
the foods have the natural sodium, but that's okay. I don't want people to feel like, okay, these foods have sodium, I'm not going to cut out. No, the natural sodium, that's okay. We want to focus on the processed foods that come with all the extra unhealthy things.
So I was going to ask about the naturals now. Is it okay to go above recommended servings, and does it pose a danger if you were to have more than the recommended serving for your dasheen and your green fig and yams and so forth?
For you to get above the recommended servings, you would have to have quite a bit, which will take you above the recommended servings of starch. so that means, again, if everything is moderation, but you would not be eating so much of that where you would be worrying about, okay, I ate so much dasheen, my sodium is extremely high, unless if you add your extra whole teaspoon of recommended salt for the day in that dasheen.
So that would be fine.
So that should not be an issue. I don't want persons to really focus on the natural sources, but it's the added ones that's the problem. It's the problem because it is so much. They add so much. And so we are appealing to persons who are making bread, those who are, in whatever. We don't have a big industrial thing here, but persons who are making food, the restaurants, be mindful and try to cut back on the salt that they add into the foods.
Now, for the children, cereals are a big thing. So talk to us about the cereals. The sodium in there?
Yes. And that's the sad thing, because even things that you would look and see, okay, there's no need to have sodium. And there's sodium in there. Cereals, and a lot of those cereals are not even very healthy. I'm talking about the dry cereals. Not the, what you call like the porridge, like oats and these things. These are not added, but when you have the processed cereals, like the box ones, yes, they have quite a bit of sodium added and sugar. So how would you know if something is low sodium? You look at the label. You look at the sodium in the nutrition facts, and look at how many milligrams. So anything 140 or less is very good, even for persons who have high blood pressure, but per serving.
And you have to stick to the recommended serving.
Yes. So
if it's one cookie, then it's one cookie.
Oh yes. So you have to see. Well, okay. Let me see how I would say that so people understand. So if the one cookie says it has 10 milligrams of sodium, that's okay. You can have 2. It will not be passing this amount. I shouldn't use cookie. That's a bad example. Let's say the cereal.
Well, you're a cookie fan, aren't you? I said cookie and your face lit up.
Well, I do, but I don't indulge too much. But I'm still human. I have a little.
We are allowed to indulge once in a while.
Once in a while, but you have to be aware of the quantity that you're having. Ice cream, all these foods, milk has sodium as well. So it is in
sodium, ice cream, yeah?
Yes, you'd get it in there. And of course, even salt is added to ice cream. Yeah, they add it to the ice cream, yeah. Because it gives flavor. There's this thing where you're eating certain foods and you're like, ooh, this flavor is so good. It's because I
wouldn't associate the ice cream with salt at all, with sodium.
It might not say salt, it might say something different. And of course, they have salt that is really in different names as well. So all these things persons should be aware of. But going back to the label, there's also something called daily value. It's a percentage, like it's based on a 2,000 calories. It might be too much to understand right now, but I will still try to attempt to explain. So anything that says that the sodium is 20% of your daily value of your intake is high. So you want to look at 5% or less, right? But looking at the sodium itself, you want 140 milligrams. So persons who have health conditions, that's okay. If you see anything 300-400 per serving, that is very high. So stay away from it.
You don't want to have to go down that route.
Yeah.
In terms of being able to know, because sometimes we consume something, and after you've eaten it, then probably you would know that I went overboard, right? So in terms of how you may feel when you've consumed too much of the salt, is there an immediate reaction that the body would give?
I'm not sure. Okay, you might feel thirsty. You might feel thirsty when you have a lot of salt. Not very immediate effect is that you might feel bloatedness. So when you take in the liquid, you're thirsty. Oh, I'm very thirsty. So you're taking water, but that water may not be passed out. So because of the balance, trying to get this sodium potassium balance, so your body will hold on to the liquid, and so you may feel a little puffiness. We ladies, we feel that sometimes, puffiness. And sometimes when ladies, before they have their, they may have this tendency to feel for something salty, and you might feel bloatedness, puffiness, and it might actually, you go on the scale and you will see that you have gained weight, but it's really water weight from your body holding on to that water because of the excess salt that you take in.
So, but you sort of skirt that, but for us as women, menstruation and salt, what's
I don't know what's the relationship, but some people tend to crave different things. Some people would crave sugar, some people crave salt, and I don't know if there are other things that they crave, but it's a real craving.
But should you stay away from it because during that time you are naturally bloated?
Yes, exactly.
So,
and so it will actually cause,
so it's something that we should completely stay away from.
I think even if we have such cravings, it's not that bad where a pregnant lady has to get something. We can stay away from it. Sometimes you crave sugar, but that doesn't mean you have to indulge so much. So we can work around it and don't have to give in to the cravings.
To give in to the cravings at all.
Sometimes we find excuses just to eat things. I think when I was pregnant, that was my excuse.
That was your thing. But were you concerned during your pregnancy about the salt intake? And is that something pregnant women have to give consideration to?
They should give consideration to it because there's a condition called preeclampsia, and it's a condition that they get. But I was not too concerned because I had the knowledge and I didn't take in much. In fact, when I was hospitalized, my blood pressure was the lowest that ever been in my life, like 90/60. Like I was well relaxed.
How did you achieve that?
I was so relaxed because I was bedridden for a while, and I was so relaxed. I was like, that's my blood pressure, so I was not concerned about it. It was really low.
So but then give us what typically probably we should have, as a meal for us to be able to keep that in check, to keep the salt intake in check.
Okay, so I guess I will reiterate many times. It's like if you are having your home cooked meals. So for example, you have your eggs, you prepare your eggs, you have your bread. So this is the issue.
No, I'm a bread fan.
Yes.
I am a bread girl. I am not ain't gonna lie. This is my thing.
Yes.
I will leave all foods and go to bread.
Yes. So you have your bread, your whole wheat bread. You have your crackers. Again, it comes down to your choices. So if you are going to choose crackers, you choose one that has lower salt intake. Again, that's where it comes to reading your packages. You can use your oats. There's no added salt in there.
No, but some people add salt to the oats.
Oh yeah, some people do that. They add
because they think it's going to cook faster, and it also gives a good flavor.
See, that's
a no-no.
So you want to minimize that. You have your oats and whatever milk that you consume with it. You have a protein. You have your eggs, or you have your beverage.
So no salt with the egg.
Yeah, you could add a little salt to your eggs. Sometimes I don't think it's necessary, but some persons may not be able to. But again, we have to shake the salt habit. We need to cut back a little. So maybe you need to, because again, it's some people when you have hard-boiled eggs, they add salt to it.
Now some people add it like I do in the water, and they figure, well, okay, you just boil that in the salted water. That's cool. Is that cool? Because as opposed
do you take the taste of the salt when you...
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, maybe it doesn't pass through the shell, so maybe that's a good thing. But I don't see the reason why we should add salt to eggs, especially hard-boiled eggs. But some people may add a little cheese to it. I don't add salt to mine, but some has a little cheese to give it a little flavor, little seasoning like peppers, you know. Again, if you flavor your eggs, then maybe you may not need salt. But what I want people to remember is to avoid the packaged products. So have your meals, your bread, your eggs, your meal should be home cooked meal, not chicken nuggets, fries. All that is processed foods. What else? You know,
and don't go to a restaurant and buy it.
Or go to,
because you may not have it home, but you go to a restaurant and get it.
Those Chinese and fast food places, they use a lot of salt, and so you leave this for maybe an occasion. You want to go out with your friends once a month. You know, we are people, we gotta go out. But some people buy food every day. I don't know how they do that, but they buy food every single day. And remember, the people who are preparing the food, what they're concerned about is the taste and people coming. So of course they're gonna add salt to the food because people want the salt. Cut back the salt, people not coming. Right. So you now have to, we have to demand what we want. We want the salt, but people are gonna add the salt to the food. So, we have to, solutions, we need to go back to a little bit of basics.
Basics.
Cook a little bit of our food,
So, but you did say earlier that in terms of, getting packaged, the foods and so forth, it's really the cans, what's on the shelves because of the...
now people are buying...
Frozen
is okay. Frozen is okay. So you can have your frozen, you can have your fresh, that is okay. It's the canned, the preserved salt. Stay away from preserved, pre-packaged foods, ultra-processed foods. Those foods that are ultra-processed, you can't even see what they are, A hot dog, it's made up of something, but you don't know exactly what is there. Hot dog is made up of the skin of the chicken, other things in the skin. It was a professor who showed me how they made hot dog, and I like, all the things that you don't want. When this is crushed nicely, added salt to it, they add some flavorings, gluten, whatever to bind it, and all these kind of things in there. Tastes great, right? But you might not even see any meat in there. It's just scrap of
that the manufacturer doesn't want to have to throw away, and then they do that. So it's not a good thing. And
I'm not talking about sausage, because there's sausages where they use meat. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. There are sausages, again, but that one is also high in salt. But there is sausages on what you call the hot dogs. They're different. You can actually make sausages from real meat and make low sodium. I don't know if we're there yet, but yeah. So I want people to know the difference. So these can be made with meat, but again, this one is still high in salt. High in salt. Salami, oh my God.
Oh, I was about to get to those cured meats. So you have that. And then, of course, we have our good, wonderful national dish with our saltfish.
Saltfish, yes.
So the dangers of that, because some people like it to be able to get that salty.
That salt. And sometimes it is way too salty where we actually have to. I remember we catered for something for, was it Creole Day? And I couldn't eat it wasn't saltfish, what's the next one? So
smoked herring.
A smoked herring. I could not, I don't think this person even washed the smoked herring because it was that salty. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna put this in my body. So we know we have this around that time, and some people eat it on a regular basis, but we can clean it out, wash it out, boil it out. Not that all the sodium will come out, it will still have some, but it will have much less.
But it will have, and that's the point I was getting to. Yeah. So that if you were to boil it 3-4 times over, you will now extract
cut out quite a bit, but it will never be sodium free.
But it will not be sodium free, but it will certainly not have too much of an effect on the body.
Again, it depends on how much you've had with your order, because everything adds up. So I couldn't say, well, okay, you can have your saltfish, and I don't know what other things that you have eaten that would have brought up how much salt you've had. If you're somebody who consume some people consume just natural foods and they have their salt fish as, so these persons will be okay because the other foods that they are consuming is not high in salt, no processed foods. So they having the salt fish and they make sure that it's not salty, it will be okay. So it's like the advice I would give, it will not suit everybody. And that's the thing about nutrition. One size doesn't fit everybody. It depends on what other things that you've been having, what type of foods you having, the quantity. So it's almost like an individualized advice. You understand what I'm saying?
I completely understand what you're saying, and I hope that you have been able to enjoy the conversation, that the information has been useful to you, and you'll be applying what you've learned here. Because yesterday, as I said, we did some shaking off. Today, we've done a whole lot more shaking off. And so we're hoping that you, with all of this information between Thursday and today's conversations, that you will be able to shake the habit, the theme for Salt Awareness Week for 2022. Thank you very much. The Chief Nutritionist in the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, Ms. Lisa Hunt. I am Lucia Joseph. See you next time. Controversial. I need to talk about it because it's affecting. No, I talk about it very openly.